I don't know. I mean, Big D, would you let Emma do this at 11? Because Ellie certainly wouldn't be in Leon the Professional.
I know enough about French directors. There is no way my underage daughter,
Right.
she will be fine. We will cover her bare breasts with a towel. No, there's no way she's being on set with these guys.
Right.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we love and growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I'm one of your three hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Ashley Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Bring me everyone!
And we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week, the audience selects from 6 movie choices that we then break out a race car VHS tape rewinder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of the podcast, the three of us will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. And for all of you that love everything Shat, we also have our own Twitch channel where you can catch live content every week. You can go to shatthemovies.com/Twitch to check out all that content. Also, all the past episodes are on our YouTube channel. And if you have any thoughts on any movie we've ever done in terms of our reviews, if you disagree with our wipe score, you can call in at 914-719-SHAT, 914-719-SHAT, and leave a Dropbox comment with your defending, or maybe you agree with us. You can also email us, hosts@shatthemovies.com. That being said, Big D, we are well into 2021 with our commissions. They keep rolling in, which is awesome. We got like 5 this week, which is great.
I think people are starting to feel like the world's coming back to normal a little bit, so maybe they're feeling a little bit free and they're commissioning movies. But first, I want to address something, Raj, because last week at the end of the podcast, we said, "Ooh, there's going to be a special guest this week." Mm-hmm. So people are tuning in, being like, "What the fuck? Where's this special guest?" And the special guest was supposed to be Carrie Gross, but unfortunately, with the virus still around and Carrie works in the medical industry, we were unable to connect the schedules. So unfortunately, she will not be with us. So I hope you can deal with the three of us today, even though it would have been great to have Carrie back. It just unfortunately at this time couldn't happen.
Yeah, that's disappointing. That would have been fun. This is one of her favorite movies. She really enjoys this. I the entire time I was watching this, I could actually see Carrie training with Léon and going out and killing people. I gave it away what movie we're doing.
Yeah, if you follow her on Instagram, she did a great cosplay of this for Halloween this year. She was Mathilda all the way down to the plant. She looked fantastic. So it would have been really fun to have her. But I've been talking to her and got some input as to why she really likes this movie, which helped me when I was watching it. But it would have been nice to just to hear her voice again. Yeah,
Big D. So what movie are we doing this episode?
So we are doing the 1994 Hitman Master and Apprentice classic, Léon the Professional.
And anytime we have someone send in a commission, we ask them to either send in a voicemail or an email explaining why they sent in money to the podcast. And this movie commission comes in from Mike from Quincy. He writes in, "Hi guys, I've been listening to your podcast for almost a year and I am hooked. I was looking to find a podcast about 80s and 90s movies and was lucky enough to stumble across your show. Your chemistry and hilarious commentary has made me a loyal listener ever since. I won't carry on for too long, so let's get down to business. The movie I selected was The Professional from 1994. Growing up, I was lucky enough to have a black box. I watched hours and hours of pay-per-view, which was where I saw this movie for the first time. It was a small but excellent cast and a simple storyline packed with action, and I loved every second. Léon is an amazing anti-hero, and my 10-year-old self had a massive crush on Natalie Portman. I'm always shocked when talking to people about great movies. Many have never even seen this gem. It's definitely one of the most underrated movies from the 90s, in my opinion. Thanks again for all the hours of entertainment and keep up the excellent work." And that, of course, comes from Mike in Quincy, Massachusetts. Well, Léon the Professional, titled Léon in the UK and Australia, and originally titled The Professional in the United States, is a 1994 English language French action thriller film written and directed by Luc Besson. It stars Jean Reno, Gary Oldman, and Natalie Portman in her film debut. The plot follows Léon, a professional hitman who reluctantly takes in 12-year-old Mathilda after her family is murdered by corrupt Drug Enforcement Administration agent Norman Stansfield. Léon and Mathilda form an unusual relationship as she becomes his protege and learns the hitman's trade. The film debuted in France on September 14th, 1994, before being released in the United States on November 18th. The Professional went on to win the Czech Lion Award for Best Foreign Language Film and the Golden Reel Award for Best Sound Editing for a Foreign Feature. The film also received 7 nominations at the 20th Cesar Awards. The Cesar Awards is the National Film Award for France, for Best Film, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Music, and Best Sound. It's the Titanic of France is what we're watching here. It did go on to gross over $46 million against a budget of just $16 million. So this was quite an achievement for Luc Besson. Before we dive into the movie and break down all the plot for you, we always ask the question, where were you? What are your memories of this film? We'll start with you, Ash.
So I've actually never seen this movie. It's one of the ones that I know a lot about because of people kind of just cosplaying it with the plant and the whole black hat and the glasses. I mean, I've seen it before. I know references from it, but I'd actually never seen it. I have some friends who really love it. I liked Le Femme Nikita, which was another film that, Besson had done. It's a very different movie, and certainly Jean Reno is the whole package in this. It's such a different take on the hitman film that I had never seen before, unlike Le Femme Nikita. So it was neat to get to sit down and actually watch it.
I love Jean Reno, but I don't know if there are many different characters he can play. They're
Right.
always Jean Reno. After watching Ronin, I kept expecting to see Robert De Niro come in the door, and this could have been the same movie. He's a great actor, but he's very, yes, no. Like I don't think, has he ever done a comedy?
Did he do, no, that was the other Frenchman. I was going to say, did he do the one where he's water skiing behind a boat?
No, that's
Gerard
not
Depardieu.
him.
Gerard Depardieu?
That's Gerard
Yeah.
Depardieu. He was in The Pink Panther. I mean, that's a comedy with Steve Martin, but he
There
kind
you
of
go.
plays a very similar, serious guy. He's kind of the straight guy to Steve Martin's, insanity.
Well, Big D, had you ever seen The Professional before we had to review it for the podcast?
Well, first off, I want to thank Mike from Quincy. I know the area very well up there. My sister, who lives in Canton now, used to live in Quincy. She was on Edison Street between the Southern Artery and Washington Street, so I used to go there all the time. But this movie, Raj, I remember this vividly. I was in college in Long Island at Stony Brook University, and it was one of the multiplexes off of the LIE. Loved the movie from the first time I saw it. It wasn't a traditional action shoot 'em up like the Schwarzeneggers or the 80s, 90s tough guy hitman. I actually felt watching this, I was like, oh, this is a bit sophisticated for me at the time, because it wasn't just about the killing. There was more behind it and what the motivations were. But I loved it since that day, and it was great to revisit it. So thank you very much, Mike.
Did you wrap a bottle of red wine in there with you in a bag and drink from it?
I believe we might have had some as a marijuana in the parking lot to expand our minds.
Well, this was definitely a blockbuster weekend date with myself. At 14, when this movie came out, I didn't have a job yet, and my weekends were mostly spent by myself renting movies. And this one looks so cool. If you look at the box art, and it was everywhere at my local Blockbusters. So I rented it, watched it, and I got to be honest, I wasn't wowed by it the first time I watched it like everyone else was. But looking back, the relationship between Jean Reno and Natalie Portman kind of creeped me out a little bit, which we'll get into. But everyone in the world thought this movie was so cool and so badass. So I've been pretending that this movie was cool since I was 14 so people would like me. That being said, Big D, play the trailer.
Let's talk business. This guy comes to town every Tuesday. Are you free Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm free Tuesday.
You can't stop what you can't see.
This guy came from the outside. He was a pro. He was fast.
In the art of the kill, Léon was the master.
Somebody's coming up. Somebody's serious.
He never missed a hit. He never got caught.
You're indestructible. Bullets slide off you. You played with them.
And above all else, he never had a reason to care. Until now.
I like these calm little moments before the storm.
My family was shut down by DEA officers.
3 kids here. One of them is missing. Find her.
Please open the door. Please.
From the director of La Femme Nikita.
If you don't help me, I'll die tonight. I can feel it.
An innocent girl with no one else to turn to.
What exactly do you do for a living?
Cleaner.
You mean you're a hitman? Cool.
A perfect assassin.
I need you to help me, Léon. I want to get those dirtbags who killed my brother.
With someone to finally believe in.
Change ain't good. Remember that, Léon.
I will.
They're about to come face to face with a cop who's crossed the line.
Bring me everyone. What do you mean, everyone?
Léon Montana is a hitman, or cleaner, as he refers to himself, living a solitary life in New York City's Little Italy. His work comes from a mafioso named Old Tony, but one day Léon meets Mathilda Lando, a lonely 12-year-old girl that lives with her dysfunctional family in an apartment down the hall. During a raid by corrupt DEA agents led by drug addict Norman Stansfield, Mathilda's entire family is murdered while she is out shopping, and she takes refuge with Léon.
So as I mentioned, I was a big fan of action shoot-'em-ups in the 90s. But when I saw this movie and we meet Léon for the first time, all I could find myself thinking was, finally, this is what a real-world professional hitman would look and act like. He's quiet, he's reserved, he's almost invisible. When he's walking around the city, nobody would notice him. He could disappear in a crowd. And that first hit that we see him doing, he moves very slowly, very smooth, very deliberate. There's something about him that without saying a word, he's very confident. And I believe his ability. I think he could do it. And I don't even question. He's up in the roof somehow. He's got a rope around some like 200-pound guy's neck and he lifts him up like he's a marionette. I don't even question about that because everything else about him screams, this is a real cleaner.
Yeah, to see Léon work is gold. You said it beautifully. This is how a hitman portrayed should operate. It kind of made me want to be a hitman. Like, it made me want to live in a dysfunctional family and to be saved by him. Listen, I'll get him some quarts of milk, whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He's definitely pretty cool. I mean, just from the beginning, his wardrobe alone, I mean, he looks unlike any other hitman that we're used to seeing. And for me, this is one of the only things that really works throughout the entire film for me is that you buy that he's dangerous. When you kind of see him on his own with his milk, he looks kind of whatever, like he would blend in. But when you actually get to see him in action in that first scene, he's dangerous and he's a badass. And I was not expecting that. It was a nice surprise to start the movie off.
Yeah, I found myself questioning though, like, what's the deal with the milk? Like, there's got to be some sort of hidden message. Like, is there? What's the deal with tough guys always drinking milk? And then I did some research. Well, classic cinema has shown heroes always drink milk. It's a sign of purity. I didn't know that. However, nowadays, anti-heroes and villains are the ones who consume this pure beverage. It's evil defeating the good, the denial of innocence, and the loss of what makes us human, all represented in that little white liquid we get from cows.
It's a simple answer. Milk, it does the body good. You know, calcium, when you're out there doing hits and you're wearing your body down, you got to regenerate, you got to recoup. But the actual answer, Raj, is that if you want to be disciplined, the important thing is routines.
Right.
And Leon's life consists of very simple routines. He picks up 2 quarts of milk from the corner deli. He irons his clothes. He does his sit-ups on the mattress. He meticulously cares for his Chinese evergreen. He attends matinees alone and watches classic films. This is how he manages to survive and stay invisible and under the radar. Without these, his life would devolve and he eventually would get caught or get killed.
What I think is interesting, though, is that his discipline is completely the antithesis of the discipline that these bad guys show in the beginning of the film. I don't know if it's just like early 90s New York. I don't know what it is, but clearly not only are these the worst cops ever, the other cops that exist are just terrible. I mean, there's all this gunfire, there's all this yelling. You would think that somebody would have called the cops and that they would have gotten there sooner. It seemed like they had just an eternity to do whatever they wanted to do. It takes a real hot fucking minute for those sirens to kind of start going. And I thought that was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I just love when a foreign film company makes a movie in or about America. Like there were some scenes that were shot here, some external scenes, but most of it was still shot over in France. So there's little things that are slightly different or just a little bit off. And if you're American, you can tell it. And I wonder if it's the same when American movies about like Europeans or things like that. Anyway, like when the gangster calls 911, that's not how 911 operates. You're not placed on hold and then patched through to a detective. Also, you talked about the sirens. That's definitely not a USA siren. That is a European siren. That's I'm in Italy, I'm getting pulled over on my Vespa.
Actually, here in Houston, where I live, because we live technically in the county, you are put on hold and patched through to someone else. We had to call 911 once when we moved into our house. We thought somebody was breaking in the back door because our alarm went off. Turned out it was a possum, whatever, huge ass possum. But we called 911 and I got put on hold for almost 8 minutes while they transferred us to a Houston call center to actually get somebody out to us. So I actually really related to the part. I was like, fuck. I was like, right? You want 911 to actually pick up. I mean, it was terrible.
But I think also the hit in the beginning, right? The guy calls 911. He's like, somebody's trying to kill me. He's killed my bodyguard. Somebody's trying to kill me.
Hold, please. That's not a possum coming through the back door.
No, the cop comes on and then he's got the knife through his throat. He says, I'll call you back. I think in real world that when that happens, they send the police because that usually means, hey, something's going on. But Stan, I do like the fact the way he deals. In New York, I think most of the neighbors would have been like, shut the fuck up. What are you making all that noise for? Stop fucking shooting down the hall. So Stan comes out and there's the old lady. What's all that noise? And he turns around to her and he just tells her to go fucking back into her apartment. He is the most unprofessional, corrupt cop I've ever seen. He's leaving fingerprints. He's dropping shell casings around. He's reloading. Nothing that he's doing in the way he sets up this crime scene could in any way be explained in some kind of legal excuse.
Well, but it's Gary Oldman, and you got to give him a pass because it's Gary Oldman. I talked on the last week's Shappy Hour. I went on this tirade about how much I love Gary Oldman and how attracted I am to him, particularly in Dracula. But this is just another example, I think, of how the early 90s were like Gary Oldman's golden hour. He was so fantastic in this time period. I mean, just 2 years before this, he had done Dracula. He would do The Scarlet Letter and Murder in the First the very next year. I mean, he truly was at the top of his game. And I think that he's so amazing. As great as, Jean Reno is in some of these opening scenes, it pales in comparison, I think, to Gary Oldman. In just a few seconds on screen, he's created this really terrifying character. When he goes up and sniffs the guy, I mean, he's perfectly unhinged. He's really fucking frightening. And I loved every second that he was on screen.
Big D, I think from now on, whenever we're together in public or we seeing each other, instead of a hug, I'm just going to come up to you and be
well, they should. I think you should. I would like it.
Just get really close to you and just maybe I'll do a little circle around you. I think that should be our new way that we interact.
What's great about that is a lot of killers or people who play tough guys, they try to keep you at a distance and dominate you with fear. What he does is he gets very close. It's very intimate. He's rubbing his face up against his. He's touching his hair. He's smelling him. That is a level of crazy that goes above like just some dumb hitman with a shotgun. And he's telling him that he can smell fear. I believe he could smell fear.
Mm-hmm.
If I was the father, I would have been like, oh, okay, let's go. Let's open up whatever the case was.
The clock?
Yes, let's go open up the clock. I'm going to give you the drugs back. I'm totally sorry. But Gary Oldman, he pulls this shit off perfectly. He looks like he's hungover. He looks like he's crazy. When he pops that Librium and he pops his neck and starts doing the Beethoven, this is masterfully done. This is Gary Oldman, perfectly cast.
When you talk about like how perfect Gary Oldman is for this role, I did some research. The sniffing part with the father kind of freaked out the actor. He didn't know that was going to happen. So that's his actual genuine reaction to Gary Oldman. Could you imagine if you're like, you have a bit part in an indie French movie and here comes Gary Oldman sniffing you and you're like, what is this guy doing? He's acting all crazy. That was improvised. The Beethoven monologue was improvised, and the "bring me everyone" line was also improvised by Oldman. Interestingly enough, Ash, you talked about some of the other movies that Oldman would later do. He went on to appear as Beethoven in Immortal Beloved. So this whole Beethoven scene must have come from his experience in preparing for that role.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and also with the Bring Me Everyone, I actually watched a really interesting interview with Gary Oldman, who he said that Besson actually asked him to do the Bring Me Everyone in like this crazy way, just as a joke, and that everybody on set thought it was so funny that they kept it in. And if you go back and you look at any movie that Gary Oldman is in, there's a story like that on every single movie that he's in, where he does this crazy shit and he makes people so uncomfortable that are on set with him. And it turns out fucking gold. I mean, I think it's great. I'd let him sniff me. I'll just throw that out there. I think he's wonderful.
Yeah. You and a couple other hosts on this podcast. The other thing about the 90s, though, when it comes to bad guys, is that there's always one with a haircut like Michael Bolton. Like, they're very easy to point out. Like, thank God you have Gary Oldman sniffing people, because if I had a hitman like that show up, a bad guy, try to get my 10% that I'm skimming off the top, I'm not giving it. You look like Michael Bolton.
But not only that, it was a very racially diverse group of tough guys. You had somebody who looked maybe Native American. You had the white guy Rastafarian who looked like Gary Oldman from True Romance. Mm-hmm. It was a very diverse group of badasses. You had the dumb Italian meathead with the shotgun at the door. Right. I liked it. I thought it was great.
Do you think that Gary Oldman brought in his clothes that he stole from True Romance and gave it to Blood? I was like, here, wear this.
Cut down on the budget. No, it wasn't quite as bad. Wasn't quite as bad as in True Romance.
Well, Mathilda quickly discovers that Léon is a hitman, and she begs him to take care of her and teach her the skills, as she wants to avenge the murder of her 4-year-old brother. At first, Léon is unsettled by her presence and considers murdering her, but he eventually trains Mathilda and shows her how to use the various weapons. In exchange, she runs his errands, cleans his apartment, and teaches him how to read. And in time, the pair form a close bond. Mathilda looks up to Léon and quickly develops a crush for him, often telling him she loves him, but he refuses to reciprocate. Now, I didn't remember the training montage with the paintballs, but I really feel like this is where Besson does an effective job of making it seem plausible that there would be this connection between a 12-year-old abused outcast and this, mid-40s emotionally stunted hitman. Like, in a different director's arms or done in a different way, this would almost seem laughable to an audience, but somehow it really works for me.
It worked for me when I was in college too, but the more I started to learn
when you hung out with a 40-year-old hitman that lived down the hall from you.
Yes, I used to think, wow, this would be great. We could go up onto the roof. Mm-hmm. We would have our weapon with our silencer. We would shoot people with paintballs. Listen, a lot of this stuff, and this is where the movie falls short. I think the realism of some of the action scenes are comical, and they're done by somebody who obviously doesn't know what they're doing other than it looks cool. I felt like somebody got like a Call of Duty game and said, okay, what guns are in Call of Duty? Let's put all those in this movie. That whole rooftop assassination or that paintball scene, they're using something that's called simunitions. Now, these are like little paintballs that are used when you're doing training, but it's in CQB, which are close quarter battles. The rounds have a lower compression. So they're meant not to break your skin, not to hurt you, but you can only shoot them at real short distances. There is no possible way that they could have made that shot on the roof. It was impossible. And that was obviously like a Bill Clinton that it's supposed to look like. Right. But there's no way. But as a kid, I was like, wow, I wish I was abducted by Léon and became his Padawan.
Well, I mean, whether it's realistic or not, I actually thought it was really charming. And it was followed by what I thought was the most charming scene in the whole movie, which is that celebrity imitation scene where he and Mathilda kind of impersonate the different celebrities. And I think that Mathilda is, at least as of 2020, we've seen her multiple times before. She's a character that we've seen, characters of similar age, similar situations. She reminds me of other female figures, but Léon, I think, is something so different. And that John Wayne scene he does, I thought was charming. I thought was really funny. And then she comes on with the Marilyn Monroe impersonation, which, fun fact, Natalie Portman had never actually seen Marilyn Monroe before. And so she based her performance off of Mike Myers' impersonation and Wayne's World. That's where she got it from. But she does this very hypersexualized, performance, and you can feel that Léon is really uncomfortable. You can feel the tension. And I thought it was a really interesting way to show this kind of straddling this line between Léon being a father figure, because clearly she's got daddy issues, and her needing a friend, and then also potentially being a predator because of the world he's exposing her to. And I thought all that complexity, you get that in a lot of French films, and I felt it a lot in that scene.
So first I felt a little guilty. I was like, okay, as an American, maybe Leon's a bit slow. Or is it just that he's foreign? I didn't really know. And then I read an article where they...
He's either slow or he's foreign. That's how Big D categorizes people. He might be mentally challenged or he's foreign.
No, he's like a fish out of water.
Okay.
Like what I'm saying is that he doesn't know these common pop culture references.
Sure.
He's never seen any of these movies. But in reading an article, they said that the character of Léon has a slight deficiency mentally that adds to some of his eccentric behavior, But I got to tell you, he does have some words of wisdom that he has learned along the way. And for me, it had an impact when Mathilda's breaking down. She said, is life always this hard, or is it just when you're a kid? And he says, no, it kind of is always like this. It seemed genuine, and it really hit me because it's hard to believe that this is Natalie Portman's first acting gig. And she's hanging in there. I mean, she's owning these scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can see what Natalie Portman's going to become in this movie. Like, it's very clear that she is incredibly talented. But as far as what you were saying about Léon, I mean, actually, that was a choice that Jean Reno made. He was very concerned about people thinking he was just a creep, that he was basically a pedophile. And so he chose to play the character in a way that put him, he used the words slow. I would say, that put him, I mean, he almost comes across as being somebody maybe on like the ASD spectrum that has like these very distinct routines and that needs to do things in a certain way and doesn't like when things are out of order. And I certainly got that.
I don't know if he was slow or on the spectrum, but maybe the article that I read is that he wanted to be emotionally stunted or emotionally unavailable so that it didn't come across as weird or creepy. But you're right, Big D. Natalie Portman is acting her ass off, but she also makes some like really strange like choices, like
character
even
choices?
As a 12-year-old. Yeah, character choices. Like I get the smoking on stair steps, but like going to the hotel manager and saying that's my lover.
No, I see. I don't get it. And Léon he's disciplined. As the movie's going on, I'm like, Léon, fucking come on. What are you doing? I understand you care about this girl, but fuck Mathilda, honestly. I feel for her, but she's doing everything she can to get them both killed. She goes after the 20 grand that's hidden in her parents' apartment. That's reckless. She sneaks by the cops. How the cop doesn't recognize her, I don't know. Maybe they're looking for a missing kid. And then she starts playing mind games with them. You don't care about me. You're so mean to me. She starts playing Russian roulette. She shoots the gun out the window, killing presumably somebody. Then she tells, like you said, Roger, the manager, oh, I'm not his daughter. I'm his lover. That leads the manager to come up to the door with two hotel goons, generic 90s hotel goons, and kick him out. They're lucky that the cops didn't come right that day, arrest Léon for child abuse, and then find out, oh, he's a hitman. Cut bait. Mathilda's dead weight. She's going to get you killed. And spoiler alert, she does.
So what you would have done in Leon's situation is you would have blown her brains out. Like you would have gotten up that night.
No.
And then, you would have just left her?
No, I would have done what she thinks Léon is going to do. I would have said I have to go out to have adult time and just not come back.
Or you could turn her into Child Protective Services, which nobody thinks of in this movie. But as far as Mathilda goes, I mean, she's a kid. Kids are manipulative. I mean, you have one, Big D. She's only 4, but they get more manipulative the older that they get. They don't understand consequences of their actions. And I don't think she has any idea what it means to be a hitman or what it means to learn to be one. And it's just kind of this other way that she's being taken advantage of. And speaking of that, we've kind of alluded to it, but a huge aspect of this movie is this hypersexualization of Mathilda and that kind of complicated stranger danger relationship maybe she has with Léon. And even Natalie Portman's parents, they were completely against her taking this role in this movie. And she fought them on it. And they agreed only under certain stipulations that certain things were removed. And I can't imagine what the original script must have looked like if they removed a huge percentage of it, because there's a lot of stuff that's left behind. But Portman is an iconic character. And the only thing I could think of that even comes close to the performance she gives here is, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but like Evan Rachel Wood from Westworld, her, star-making role in 13, where she plays a young girl that's 13. She's very similar to this character and she's over-sexualized. But as a mom, I can relate to Natalie Portman's parents being a bit concerned. And I don't know. I mean, Big D, would you let Emma do this at 11? Because Ellie certainly wouldn't be in Léon the Professional.
I know enough about French directors. There is no way my underage daughter, she will be fine. We will cover her bare breasts with a towel. No, there's no way she's being on set with these guys. God only knows.
Now, was that impression slow or foreign?
Oh, Lord, y'all.
Oh, that was foreign. That was the director who is trying to lure and to groom the young Natalie Portman.
Well, you're saying that, but like one of my favorite pictures from France when I lived there is this huge sex shop with like the women naked in the windows, and then next to it is a McDonald's play place. And so you've got kids in the window in the play place, and next to it are all of these naked women that are selling themselves. And like the French feel very differently about sexuality. They feel very differently about nudity and about the time that you come of age. And so I get it, but I think that you bring up a really good point. I wouldn't let her be in a U.S. film, Ellie, my daughter, be in a U.S. film, much less a French film. We did, The City of Lost Children, which was creepy. We did this one. I mean, there's a theme here, guys. I mean, there's a bit of a running theme.
I keep trying to get Big D to watch Stranger by the Lake with me, but he won't watch it. Just the two of us. That's a great French film that came out a couple years ago. But there are multiple versions of this film. Which version did you guys watch? Did you watch the one where she puts on the dress and she asks him to lose the virginity?
So that's apparently in every version now. 10 years ago, they recut the film. It was removed for a long time. But when it was re-released, I think around 2010, all the versions have it. But I happened to watch the extended cut.
Yeah, I watched the extended cut, the director's cut as well.
Yeah.
In the original script, though, they do have sex. That was cut. That was removed. But also, I learned...
wait, look, there we got our answer. What Natalie Portman's parents were against.
Wouldn't do.
We got to cut those sex scenes. Cut them.
Listen, are you sure? I can make it very tasteful.
Do you mind if I keep this for my personal collection?
I hope the emails pour in for your terrible accents. Like Gene and I got raked over the coals. So please write in.
Sarak. Liv Tyler was actually considered for this role, but at age 15, she was deemed too old.
Yes.
Well, guys, do you remember what she looked like at age 15, though? That's about the time she was in the Aerosmith movies. Like, she looked like a grown-ass woman by the time she was 15. Yeah. And she went on to do Stealing Beauty, which is a movie I absolutely love. But I get it. She would have looked really out of place in this.
Why would you look out of place?
She looked like a grown-ass woman.
But I think that would have been better because she's saying to Léon, she's like, I'm 18. There's no way, slow or not, emotionally stunted or not, there's no way that he's going to believe that she's 18. Taking her to a restaurant, giving her champagne.
Yeah, but you know what? I have to apologize to all of our French listeners. This is not something that is uniquely French. If you go back and listen to our Indiana Jones podcast, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have a famous conversation where they're discussing the age of Marion and her relationship with Indiana, that Indiana Jones was her teacher and had sex with her when she was a student. And I think it's Lucas who says, well, if she's 15, that's not really, exciting. She should be younger. So this isn't something that is solely the French. Americans have a vast, rich history of dreaming about having sex with girls when they're way too young.
I mean, you're talking about a male problem. I mean, I think that it's universal that men like young girls. And I don't mean like little girls, like 9 and 8, but like, I mean, when I turned about 15, that's when people started hitting on me on the street, like grown ass men, like 30 and 40-year-olds. I mean, about the time I hit puberty, like that's when that happened. I dated guys that were 10, 15 years older than me. I think a lot of women do that. I mean, you're talking about, and I was taken advantage of because they did that, right? But like, it's a universal problem. Men like pretty young things. And now Matilda's a little young, I think. I think being 11 is a bit on the young side, but when they're 15, 16, I mean, I think that's not a French problem. That's a dick problem.
No,
not Big D Dick Ebert problem, but like
it will be my problem soon. It will be my problem when Emma starts getting out and about.
As a 40-year-old male, I just want to make it absolutely clear that if I saw a 15-year-old girl on the streets today, I'm not going to catcall. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to do anything. I have my, before I started dating Kelly, my Bumble settings were age appropriate, 10 up, 10 down.
Hey, and we appreciate you being an ally, but unfortunately not all of you are like that. So
just saying, I just want to make sure that there's a disclaimer at the bottom of this podcast.
# Roger's not a pedophile.
No. Well, when Léon heads out for the apparent assignment, Mathilda fills a bag with guns from Léon's collection and sets out to kill Stansfield. She bluffs her way into the DEA office by posing as a delivery girl, only to be ambushed by Stansfield in a bathroom. Léon, after discovering her plan in a note left for him, rescues Mathilda, killing 2 more of his men in the process, and an estranged Stansfield confronts Tony, who is violently interrogated for Léon's whereabouts. As Mathilda and Léon recover from the ordeal, Mathilda attempts to seduce Léon.
So I hope I didn't make it seem like I wanted to have sex with the young girl.
No.
Oh,
no,
okay,
guys,
good.
The ladies doth protest too much, guys.
Okay.
You all do not have to go off and make that big statement. Like, I mean, I wouldn't do a podcast with you guys if I thought you all were gross and creepy.
Good. Woo. Okay, so back to the movie. So here's the problem I have. This is Manhattan, right? Mm-hmm. This is a DEA office.
Right.
There's 2 guys at the front, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And they got a metal detector. So obviously security is an issue. Léon comes busting in, goes through the metal detector, knocks the 2 guys out. It looks like he maybe tries to pull them and hide the bodies somewhere else. It was harder to attack the guard at Nakatomi Plaza. Or do you remember what happens when Schwarzenegger goes into that LA police station? Yeah, there's maybe 2 guys out front. This is an office building filled with police, filled with the DEA agents. This whole raid goes down. It's a joke. It's comical, but you needed it to happen, I guess.
Well, listen, you talk about how this is an entire DEA office filled with agents that are supposed to enforce drugs. How are none of them looking at Stansfield and saying, listen, I think this guy's got a problem. We need to maybe do a drug test on him, or maybe we need to do an intervention, because the kind of drugs that he's taking, I don't know what he's doing. I'm going to need you guys to fill in here, but the drug he's taking takes effect so quickly, it makes him a raving lunatic. Like even his buddy Blood, I guess the undercover DEA agent who's like a Rastafarian, walks into the bathroom and isn't the least bit concerned with Stansfield rubbing his gun all over Matilda's face and then agrees to take her up to his office. What is happening here?
Yeah, that bathroom scene's a bit odd, but Roger, what he's taking, those green and yellow capsules, that is Librium. It's a sedative and a hypnotic medication used to treat anxiety, insomnia, and withdrawal from addiction to other drugs. So maybe he is a recovering addict and they gave him this or whatever, but I think it calms him down. It puts him in that mood. But yeah, a little girl in a DEA bathroom with a man would normally be red alerts. Hey, let's see what's going on in here.
Why is the Thai food delivery girl, why are you rubbing your gun up and down her cheek?
Yes.
This doesn't make any sense.
What? I guess it was a special delivery. Isn't that what you said?
That's some. But like he also has like these words of. He always has something to say.
He does. And again, we're learning little bits about life as an adult for this young girl. And they're having the conversation, and it really hit me to be true. What Stansfield said, I don't get joy out of killing someone who doesn't value their life. He said, it's always the same thing, though. It's when you start to become really afraid of death that you learn to appreciate it. And he said, do you like your life, sweetheart? And I started thinking, it's so true. We think we have endless time on this planet. We take things for granted, wasted time. We really don't think about how we optimize our day all the time. Until you're towards the end or you think it might come to an end, that's only when you really start to value every minute.
That got so deep very quickly. But no, I completely agree. But what I think is so sad here, though, is that Mathilda hasn't had much of a life up till this point. I mean, we got to see a little bit of the kind of horrible life that she leads at the beginning with how abused she was. And that brings us to this infamous dress scene that you were talking about a second ago, Roger, that we watched in this version. And first of all, I didn't think it was as bad as people have made it out to be. You know, people have talked about it as being one of the worst scenes that they've ever seen with children. And unfortunately, a lot of worse things have come out since then. But I do think it's a couple of things. So one, I think it's this perfect character moment for Mathilda, because in this one scene, we see that she's been so beaten down that she mistakes any kind of love for sexual love. And I think it also shows this tension that Léon has, that he is kind of keeping this possibility for a relationship with her open. He doesn't totally shut it down in the sense that he makes her like go in another room. He goes and sleeps in the bed with her afterwards. Like there's some gray that's happening here. And I thought it was pretty ballsy. And I love that the whole scene feels really natural, that tension. And that's because Besson would not let the actors practice the scene ahead of time. So you get some real awkwardness in this performance, because it was the first time that Natalie Portman approached him and said these lines. And, you know, she's this young girl that isn't sexual in nature, but she's trying to pretend like she is, just like Mathilda. And it made for the scene to read, I think, really interesting and awkward. And I think it worked in the way that they wanted it to work.
Yeah, the awkwardness comes from Leon's character, right? Natalie Portman's character is very forward. She's very assured of herself. Like she's, I think, utilizing her past abuse. And I'm not an expert in this, so this is just me spitballing what I saw on screen and armchairing psychology here. But I assume what they're trying to emote is that she sees herself as an adult and she's acting as one, or what she perceives as one. But the awkwardness comes from Besson's character, where he's like, listen, you know, this isn't right. Even if he is slow, he understands some moral compass.
Okay. So Ashley, tell me how I do with this. Okay. This is the way I took it. Okay. I think that Mathilda's grown up without ever feeling love. Her parents didn't love her. Her mother didn't love her. She sees her mother, who we assume is a prostitute, because she says, hey, I got to go out. And the husband says, hey, give me some before you go to work.
Sex worker.
Okay. She's a sex worker.
And there's nothing wrong with being a sex worker, yes.
The sister is in there trying to work on her fat ass so she can get attention from guys. Everything Mathilda has learned is that the way you get attention and the way men give you attention is as a sexual object. So Mathilda sees the kindness of a dress as, oh, he must want to have sex with me. So that's how she jumps to that. And if the director wanted us to understand that Léon, his intentions were pure, you don't have him give the reason why he's not going to have sex with her is because I wouldn't be a good lover. That's bullshit. That's telling me that he's thinking about it like, I would like to have sex with her, but I don't know how good I will be. He should have said, no, Mathilda, you're a child. No. Instead of being like, well, maybe later. If I get better, then we'll do it.
I love how, first of all, your French impersonation is based off of Pepe Le Pew. And then secondly, like, I think we just lost our last French listener. So thank you for all the French listeners who hung out with us for all the years.
And I think your accent comes more from the chef in Little Mermaid than Pepe Le Pew, like the Les Poissons. Yes, but anyway, with that being said, I think that, your assessment, I think, is kind of spot on. But I disagree with you guys on one thing, and maybe it's just from watching it from a female perspective, but I don't feel that Leon's the only awkward person. I feel like Mathilda's just as awkward. The way she carries herself in that dress, the fact that she's got on just a little bit too much makeup, like she doesn't know what she's doing. And I remember being that young and thinking that I was grown and could be this sexual object, but had no idea what that meant. And I got those vibes completely from her, like in feeling how awkward it is when you're a girl and you go and approach a boy or a man for the first time, depending on how old you are, right? Somebody your age that's a teenager or an actual man, like you feel so awkward in your own body. And I think that Natalie Portman portrays that beautifully in that scene, that she is so awkward. And I think she's probably been sexually abused by her dad before. I mean, I think there's overtones of that. Like, I think all of that is there in this one little tiny microcosm of the movie, which is why I get that it's controversial, but I also think it's really powerful.
Did you guys ever see the movie Super?
Mm-mm.
It was a James Gunn wrote it, and I think he directed it as well. It was like an indie movie that came out. Rainn Wilson is the main character. It's kind of like a kick-ass.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's a similar scene where he has a younger female apprentice that he takes under, and she comes on to him and tries to have sex with him as well. The very similar scene that happens here. But yeah, I mean, there's not many other than Super. I can't remember any other type of movie in the 90s that would tackle something like this.
I agree. I mean, I don't remember when 13 came out, but 13 is a very similar film in the sense that it's addressing a 13-year-old young girl and her best friend who were very hypersexualized, that they go out and just do some really crazy things and are taken advantage of in a lot of crazy ways. But other than that film, and maybe the movie Kids, which is just about how kids in general are taken advantage of, but this stands out. And I don't know, I think the movie is I can't imagine seeing the film and then this scene being taken out because of the whole purpose and the theme of what this movie is about with Mathilda's story. I don't think it works as well if that scene isn't in there.
No, but I think we can all agree we're glad that they cut the sex scene.
Oh, for sure. That would have been much different.
Like if Léon wakes up, his pants are gone and he's just like in the bed with her, then we'd all be like, what the fuck just happened? And the police come in. Be a very different movie.
Because this is a threat of something being nefarious. If he actually has sex with her, he is a predator and we can't like him anymore. Like, that prevents us from, he goes from being an anti-hero to just being a villain, right? So, I mean, that I think would have not worked at all.
Well, when Mathilda returns home from grocery shopping, an NYPD team sent by Stansfield captures her and attempts to infiltrate Léon's apartment. Léon ambushes the team and rescues Mathilda. He then creates a quick escape for her by smashing a hole in an air shaft. He tells her to meet him at Tony's place in an hour and that he loves her. Moments before the police blow up the apartment. In the chaos, Léon sneaks out of the building disguised as a wounded officer, but Stansfield recognizes him and shoots him in the back. As he is dying, Léon places an object in Stansfield's hands that he says is from Mathilda. Stansfield discovers that it is a grenade pin and then opens Léon's vest to find a cluster of active grenades, which promptly detonate, killing Stansfield.
Okay, so I griped a bit about the paintball sniper. We get to this apartment assault, and that is the NYPD ESU, the Emergency Service Unit. It is a component of the NYPD Special Operations Bureau. They are uniquely trained and equipped for these special tactical situations, but this equipment is ridiculous. If you don't know and you just think, oh, that's a cool looking machine gun, the film goes above and beyond to what would really be there to what looks cool on screen. So, for example, we see several of the cops wearing M67 hand grenades. Those are fragmentation hand grenades. There's no way the police would have those. There's no reason you would ever have it. But the worst is they've got the shields up and the NYPD comes out and they pull out this French Moss AA-52 with a carrying handle. It's got a tripod. It's got a Russian scope on it. It's a belt-fed machine gun. There is no reason that any police, SWAT would ever have this, let alone to shoot a rocket through the door. There's presumably people in all these apartments next door, but hey, it looks cool on screen.
Yeah, this reminded me of my hours upon hours of playing The Division, where there's just all these massive LMGs just shooting at me. Like they pull out the shield, and again, they don't evacuate the building. They're just rushing in. They don't care what's happening. They're blowing up buildings. Again, this is my assumption. This is how Europeans look at America. They're like, they're always with the machine guns and their violent police. We are streets ahead here in Europe.
It's like that scene in Arrested Development where Charlize Theron's character takes Michael to the restaurant that's the American restaurant, and the appetizer is a box of donuts, and like the the Cokes are the size of like a bucket. That it's just all of these stereotypes. And it is. And what's interesting though is that I think those stereotypes, people really do think a lot of those things about America elsewhere in the world, whether they're true or not. But I have to say that all the weaponry aside, we get a little bit more of Stansfield here, Gary Oldman's character. And I had a lot of regret at this point in the movie because the movie spends so much time with Mathilda. It spends so much time with Léon, but we don't get a ton of information about Stansfield. I feel like in a lot of ways it was a waste of Oldman because he creates this really great caricature of a corrupt cop, but we don't get to hear a lot about his background. We don't spend a lot of time with him unless he's with one of our main characters, and we don't know a lot about his motivations. He's very scary, but I think a little bit more exposition and time spent with him kind of would have made his character feel a little less one note by the end of the film. And maybe that's just because I'm such an Oldman fan, but that's how I felt.
Maybe this movie doesn't need it because I think this movie is really more about the relationship between Mathilda and Léon. But I agree with you. I would have liked to have known a little bit more of his character. But also, when it comes to characters, Léon, I know Jean Reno is obviously French, and this is a French film, but he's working for an Italian mobster. Is he French or is he Italian? Léon, the character, I mean.
His name is French. I've always assumed he was French.
Big D, do you think he's French or Italian?
Again, I assume because of the name, but I get the feeling from Tony that he came over from Italy. I don't know how Tony would have found this French 19-year-old and took him under his wing. So I think it's left again, just American audiences, hey, try to figure it out.
Well, you think that he's going to get away with it. And this is one of the cool things I like about this movie is when he's escaped and he's got on the SWAT outfit and you think he's going to make it. A badass cleaner like himself has fooled the 200 officers, but no, the villain, you see him rise up. You see him recognize Léon, and then, you see him with the gun pointed at him, but you don't see him shooting. You don't see Stansfield shoot Léon. Instead, there's like an artistic montage of the point of view of Léon walking out the door, and you almost get like this sense of hope, like things are going to be okay. He's going to meet up with Mathilda at Tony's. They're going to escape. They're going to get out of this life of destitute. Mm-hmm. But you just kind of see the camera fall down and then the light get brighter. And I really thought, like, in a movie that has over-the-top action and over-the-top acting from Gary Oldman, this one quiet moment really kind of sets it apart from other similar types of action or movies that Luc Besson has done.
But we've seen this done in how many other movies? There was that movie with Bill Murray where they're robbing a bank and, hey, we're going to pretend we're part of the abducted customers.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
We saw it in Silence of the Lambs. I'm going to dress up as the cop. I would assume that these cops would check and say, hey, the one cop looks at him like, wait, you're in the 3rd precinct.
Right. That's why he keeps his mask on.
Yeah. Do you know Billy? Do you know Tony and Paul? That's all they would have to say. But my favorite part of this whole scene, yes, it was beautiful that he was coming out of this darkness to the light. But my favorite part of this is I like that Léon, when he's going to try to get revenge, he uses a new special weapon that we've never seen before. It is the theatrical grenade. It's a grenade, which the special feature is when you pull the pin, it takes an extra long dramatic pause before it blows up. And then it blows up. And you're like, what the hell was that? Like a 15-second, 30-second delay? Other than for theatrical effect, that would have no tactical advantage.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Mathilda goes to Tony as Léon had told her to do earlier. Mathilda tries to convince Tony to hire her in Leon's place, but Tony flatly refuses to hire a 12-year-old and tells Mathilda he has been instructed by Léon to give his money to her if anything happened to him. He gives Mathilda $100 from Leon's funds as an allowance and sends her back to school, where the headmistress readmits her after Mathilda reveals what had happened to her. She then walks into a field near the school and plants Leon's houseplant, as she had told Léon that she would give it roots. And movie.
Yeah, this is another complaint I have about this film. I can deal with some unrealistic pieces, and I talked about how I kind of regret that there wasn't more about Gary Oldman. And then there's also this whole thing. I just kept asking myself, like, how does a kid wander around like this? Like, I know they didn't have Amber Alerts back in 1994, but, who's her guardian? Who's filling out her paperwork at this school? I mean, there's no way that she slips through the system this easily. And I can forgive, like I said, some of those unrealistic pieces, but this was just kind of like, come on, they would have known. They would have known she was missing. She wouldn't have ended up where she is. I thought that was just kind of a bit ridiculous.
Well, the paperwork at the school is the father had paid for the year. So she was already enrolled there, so the school was aware of her. But how is nobody watching the news? You know, how has nobody recognized this missing girl? The police officer at the apartment, he doesn't recognize her. The corner deli guy that she used to go to all the time, he doesn't recognize her. Come on, her family was murdered. This would be the main story on every newspaper. And the mistress at the school, she doesn't even say, well, what happened to your parents? I would assume maybe the police would have gone and talked to them, but no.
Well, I don't understand why she left the school to begin with. If she has such a troubled household, like I'd want to be at this sleepaway.
But it's a reform school. Like they make very clear that it's a reform school. And so like she's probably more miserable there. More abuse happens in those places than they do in homes. And I think that that's what's so sad. I don't know. I just find the ending of this movie really sad because there's this victory that Léon gets because he goes out his way and he goes out by, you know, giving her his fortune and all of that. And then she gets a lowly like $20 bill and, you know, walks away and goes back to this place where she's alone again without anybody. I mean, that sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got the plant. It's kind of an ugly plant and it's not really much that she gets to take away with her. So,
how dare you call that plant ugly?
It's a little ugly.
Léon, the plant for the win. Not since Wilson and Castaway have I been so emotionally attached to an inanimate object.
Yeah, but that is possibly the worst place you could ever plant a Chinese evergreen. It's out in the middle of the yard. You don't think that?
Too much
yes,
sun.
You have to hide it in the shrubs. You know, the next day when the landscapers come by, they're just running that shit over. How's Mathilda going to feel now? She's lost Léon. Her family's dead. She lost the 20 grand. Tony's like giving her an allowance of like $20. And now she comes out and her fucking plant's gone.
Yep. Well, a valuable lesson will be learned.
Too much sun.
Well, with that being said, now it's time to break out our Shat meters and give you our wipe scores. If you've never listened to the podcast before, a 0 wipe movie is great. A 5 wipe is terrible. We'll start with you, Ashley. How many wipes do you give The Professional?
So I liked a good bit about this movie. I did feel that, like a lot of Luc Besson's other films, I think that it's a lot of show and not a lot of substance in parts. And I do think that in this one in particular, there's some parts that are really well developed. There's this great character study that happens of both Léon and Mathilda's character. But there are other parts that are really given kind of the short end of the stick. Like I talked about with Gary Oldman's character, I really didn't like Mathilda's character's ending. And I genuinely just don't know if this is a movie that I'm going to remember. It's not one that I think I ever really need to watch again. I didn't hate it, but I thought it was pretty average. And because of that, I'm giving it exactly the average score of 2.5 wipes.
Interesting. Big D, do you agree?
So I said in college when I saw this, I thought this was like this was a deep vision. Now watching it as an adult, I think it's more superficial than I remembered, but it is beautifully shot. It is iconic. You can remember the dialogue. Now today, I'm uncomfortable with the relationship. It is a tad long, but I think overall it's a compelling story. I think if they had trimmed off 20 minutes of this, and a lot of that being that odd relationship moments, and just had it where he was trying to teach her, he saved her life, he was going to try to mentor her, I think it would be a great movie. I came into this thinking I was going to do 1, but I think 1.25 is more accurate. It is a good film. It's iconic. The performances are great. But when you look at it a little deeper, there's not much there. And what you do find there could be a bit troubling.
Interesting. Well, I do agree with both of you that this movie does have some flaws. Oldman is completely overacting, and Besson's directing can seem slightly amateurish at times. I don't know if it's because he's slow or he's foreign. The pacing is a bit long, especially in the international director's version. But as he's been known to do, he does a great job of creating kick-ass anti-heroes. You may remember them, Nikita, Corbin Dallas, and even though he didn't direct them, he wrote them, The Transporter and Brian Mills from Taken. So Leon's character, as you said, Big D, is timeless. The action is both over the top and yet still has a foreign indie feel to it. And the relationship between Mathilda and Léon is uncomfortable because it feels real. And you could believe that an abused individual like Mathilda would mistake those feelings of love with an attempt to express those through a physical or sexual contact. And I like when movies, on top of that, have an arc. When main characters go through a journey, when they learn something at the end, when they either redeem themselves or become different than when we first saw them. Like, that was our biggest complaint with Crocodile Dundee. He didn't have any obstacles to overcome. He didn't really change. He's the same person. And maybe that's because Australians are all cool and awesome. But with this movie, there's a clear arc between the two main characters. So I would recommend, if you haven't seen The Professional, go and see it. If nothing else, then just to kind of experience the masterful acting jobs that the three main characters do. So for that, I'm giving it a 1 wipe score. So if you were to add up 1 wipe, 1.25, and 2.5, then divide by 3, that gives you the overall Shat score, which is what, Big D?
So that comes out to an average wipe scale of 1.41, and that sits it now in the 47 spot. It is tied with Total Recall, which feels great. It is a little better than RoboCop and The Thing, and it's a little worse than Last Action Hero and The Matrix. So it's in the middle of those movies that I think I'm okay with it there.
Yeah, I mean, it feels right. I mean, I guess the system works. Listen, if you have any thoughts, though, if you have a different opinion, please write in. Our email is hosts@shatthemovies.com, or you can call in 914-719-SHAT. Just make sure you put the Dropbox in the title or in the voicemail. And we typically would have some shout outs, but we talked about how we were deprecating that. It still has not yet been deprecated. So if we ever get to record the Dropbox in a couple of weeks, Big D, I'm going to do we have the second batch. It's like Gremlins 2. So yeah. So anyway, that's a review of Léon the Professional. Big D, what movie are we doing next?
So next week we are doing a movie which tagline was "The music and the feelings go on forever." And it is the story of Stephanie is the leader of Rydell High School's Pink Ladies, a gang of girls who are counterparts of the school's group of greasers called the T-Birds. Stephanie is tired of her relationship with top T-Bird, Johnny. So she breaks up with him and quickly catches the eye of English exchange student Michael Carrington. Hoping to win her over, Michael tries to overcome his nerdy ways with holding off the jealous Johnny. This was commissioned by Michael Davis. It came out in June of 1982, and it made $15.2 million at the box office.
I can't believe it made that much. Yeah. Well, that does it for... I'm only saying that because I know Ashley's favorite movie.
Not my favorite, but I mean, it's definitely up there. It's not my favorite movie. My favorite movie is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or Inception.
It's your favorite movie.
Those two are my favorite movies, Inception, Eternal Sunshine. But this one is one of my favorite movies. I sing it all the time. I may tonight, I mean, when this comes out, this will have already happened, but tonight we're celebrating Jean on the Shappy Hour, and I probably will begin singing from this because I'll be so excited that this is up next in our commission line.
Your giddy little smile. It's so funny because there's always these times where you're like very stoic and very serious. And then I'm reading about the European nerd and you're like,
I need a cool rider. I mean, it's just like, come on, y'all. It's amazing. C-O-O-L. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer is a mood, y'all. She's a mood in this movie. Thank you so much to Michael Davies and ahead of time. This is going to be brilliant. You all should see Roger's face right now. He is just...
it looks like somebody just shit on his desk. Look at him.
I know.
Yeah.
Prepare yourselves for Roger to just be wrong next week.
You mean right, like the rest of the world?
Whatever. The rest of the world. This is a cult classic. This is how I learned about reproduction. I mean, come on. It's brilliant.
That's because you grew up in Louisiana, and that was the best you guys could get from sexual education was Grease 2.
That's actually not untrue.
That was the health class. Here, you're going to watch this scene from Grease 2.
Watch Grease 2.
That's all you need to know.
You're not incorrect about that. Yeah. We had to have sex to learn about it, and we had this movie, so.
Well, thanks again to Mike from Quincy for your commission of Léon the Professional. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media. Share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow the handle Shat the Movies. Again, you can support the podcast by going to our website, shatthemovies.com, and clicking on our support page. You can do it multiple ways by shopping through our Amazon affiliate link, completing free anonymous surveys so that we can sell it to advertisers. You can buy our merchandise, or you can commission your own movie. Maybe you have an upcoming anniversary or birthday or something you want us to do. All the instructions are there. Just visit the website, shatthemovies.com. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all the information on that website, shatontv.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including Twitch and YouTube, where we're posting all of our live content on Twitch every week, and then that gets then uploaded into YouTube. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Ashley Schlafly, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie review. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, good night, and good luck.
And stay the fuck at home.
Getting lots of action, having lots of fun. Scoring like a bandit to the bumble. Somebody got to use Whoa, it's me.
Personally, I think that being late demonstrates terrible leadership qualities. Well, I'm not waiting anymore. Here she is. Well, we're gonna be late. Let's go.
Geometry and history is just a pain. Biology and chemistry destroys my brain. Well, don't they know that I deserve a better fate? I'm really much too young.
When your cousin Sandy told me you were coming to school in America, I said, Sandy, any cousin of yours is a cousin of mine.
Hey, you caught it. How tall are you? Never mind. We'll put high heels on your sneakers, and we'll make you a center.
And I saw this angel hopping down the street. I said, hey, pretty baby, how's about a date?
Hello, boys.
Good morning, Miss Mason.
I would really love to see all of you in music appreciation this year, okay?
I'd like to see all of you in music appreciation this year.
You just might.
Oh, I think I'm in love.
We're gonna rock, we're gonna roll, we're gonna pop, we're gonna ball. Sports, 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 sports. Tonight.
It's better to play with a group than with yourself.
We're going prowling. We're going prowling.
What is the best time of the month for a woman to conceive? At night?
It's my last 2 periods.
That's all right, dear. You can make them up after school.
What are you gonna be when you grow up?
A burden on society.